All right, you guys, welcome back to the Curated Beauty Podcast. Last week, I took a little hiatus. I'm returning from Florida, where I did pretty much nothing. For those of you who don't know, I found this really special place because of my best friends, Chelsea and her husband, Tom. And last year, actually, we gave it such an indulgent chance to become also our special place that we snowbirded down there last winter. And I really put my business to the test by working virtually. Gosh, that came with a whole set of challenges. And I wasn't sure I was going to do it again this year, but we are headed back there after the holiday with my family to spend some time in this really, really special place along the Gulf Coast. It's nothing fancy in terms of like being, all these elaborate shops and beaches and all these things, which a lot of people are really surprised that I like this area when I tell them where we've been going. But it is special in a sense that it is the most in tune with nature and the water and the sand and grounding. It is just such a beautiful representation of how God has given us such a beautiful place to live. And so even though we're not going down there again until after the holiday, we I called my friend last week and I said, I just really feel like my creative juices are kind of like at a little bit of a halt and I want to get away. I have learned that instead of grinding harder when you feel that way, you need to just pause and give yourself a free day. Free days are something that I work into my schedule all the time because the more you rest, the more you recharge, the sharper your ideas are, and you leave your competition in the dust. And so as we were down there, what did we do? We talked ad nauseum. I mean, not to us, but if anyone else was listening, they'd probably be like, "Can you guys talk in circles anymore?" We just walked on the beach. One day we went for a 6 mile beach walk. I found the most beautiful sand dollar with a little heart etched around the middle. Naturally, like nobody drew it on there. It's actually really rare to find a sand dollar just on the beach hole, but they're broken. Um, it was not that warm, but it was sunny, and the last day was so nice because it wasn't too windy. And actually, this friend and I, we will go even when it's cold, where you probably should wear shoes. We just get that grounding in. And as Chelsea says, we just can solve the world's problems by walking the beaches. And we do. I mean, there were a lot of things that I kind of was working through business wise. And I love to share some of these things in this podcast because there are other business owners out there that feel super alone and they think that what they're going through is super unique. And I hate to tell you and love to tell you all at the same time that it's not unique. Like we all go through these challenges. It's just not what we're portraying on Instagram. And so speaking of Instagram, because typically I'm running, people think I'm on Instagram probably a lot more than I actually am because I'm posting and then moving on. And of course, I'll respond to the DMs or comments as much as I can, but really it's a means to an end for us to get what we do out to our niche clientele that wants to follow us. That's it. That's the only reason that we really have it. And to be completely honest, if I didn't have this business, I would probably get off of social media altogether because it can be addicting. And so when I have this extra space, I mean, I don't know if you guys know this, but our phones are addictive. I find myself in a bored place, constantly fighting with like, be bored, Jessica, let your mind rest versus I'm bored. I need a dopamine hit and picking up my phone and checking something. And a lot of times that can lead to just mindless scrolling. How many times have all of us been like laying in bed and it's like, go to bed. What are you even doing? But it's just designed to keep you scrolling. So anyway, I, saw some different Instagram stories, different posts. And if I'm being honest, sometimes it can be really triggering. And not so much in a comparing myself to other people's businesses, because I really don't do that. I've definitely evolved beyond that. I was actually talking to my friend about this. Like, do you ever feel like jealous of other people? And I really don't. Um, But there can be things that I see that are triggering in terms of, maybe either past people that have worked for me that pop up, or honestly, I have this past employee that was a really close person in my life. And someone said, "Oh my gosh, did you see that she's working at a new business now?" Because actually, she had moved to a different state, threw her a goodbye party, like wished her well. Um, the business had shifted and changed. It was a perfect evolution of like wishing her well on her new endeavor and my business moving beyond her. And I actually had no idea that she had was working at a new place out of state because she had blocked me. And a patient who's a really good patient actually used to live in that area. And she said, "Hey, do you know this person's new place of work? Because I would love to refer my friends that live there to her." And I had to embarrassingly tell her that for reasons unbeknownst to me, which are none of my business, I don't care, she had blocked me. So, how funny and how full uh, circle that, you know, for no reason, someone, doesn't want me to have access to them for whatever reason, and that's their prerogative, but it actually ends up hurting someone because they can't evolve beyond like, maybe this isn't someone I want to be best friends with anymore, but that could have been a relationship that could have, like they say, don't burn bridges. Like that could have been a relationship that really helped propel you into what's next. Things just don't have to be negative. So anyway, there were just a few things. Like there's people that I see, that like to emulate what I do, and that's fine. Um, but there seems to be this growing trend, and I'm just going to talk about it because I know that you guys struggle with these things too. And it can feel very isolating. There's this growing trend of, as a business owner and as a successful business in my industry and beyond, I'm on the Inc. 5000 list. I was just above the actual top 500. I was 551, I believe, for fastest growing private companies. I am subject to a lot of criticism when we do outgrow an employee and we give them either the gift of moving on, or we just have words to, think that it's best for someone to move on, or they feel it's best to move on. There's become almost this little band of people that essentially want to be hypercritical of what I do. And so all that to say, I have been a little triggered on Instagram lately, and I'm a human. I don't want to change who I am in terms of not allowing things to hurt me. I want to feel, I want to look at what those messages are. I want to really dig into leadership and be the best darn leader that I ever could imagine. And so when I, really think about what I want to bring to this discussion, I want to talk about, and this is so applicable to so many people, not just entrepreneurs, not just people in the med spa space, but when the past lingers on and things hit you in the face from whatever, maybe it's Instagram, maybe it's people telling you things that you're trying to create boundaries from and you're trying to separate yourself from. Um, but for me, like why former team members turn into really unexpected critics. And not just to talk about that, to talk about it, how do you stay focused on your vision? And again, like who doesn't have friends that they're no longer friends with? And there's just like, as Taylor Swift says, bad blood, you don't always have control over what that outcome is. You may want to walk out of that and not burn bridges because of lessons that you've learned, but you can control other people's inner child and internal messaging and what's currently going on in their lives and their level of happiness and how they decide to move through things. So, really, that's what I want to dig into today. I want to reshare a little bit of the story of my business because I'm really transparent and I really have a passion for not only delivering amazing medical aesthetic and functional medicine, wellness, and regenerative services to my patients with an emphasis on customer experience. I also want to lead my team hard and strong and with a lot of impact and integrity. And I'm fully committed to what I do. I'm not perfect. I have evolved as a leader so much, but man, there are some battle wounds that you carry with you. And I, my heart goes out to people who choose to be entrepreneurs because you're moving through that without knowing if it's going to be successful, who you're going to lose in the journey. And I really want to kind of round it out on focusing on what matters, celebrating your successes, and really making sure that you don't allow other people's opinions and alliances to define you and what your vision and mission and values are. Leadership is not about perfection, it's about growth, it's about resilience, and it truly is about staying true to the mission. And it can be really lonely if you don't find that niche core group. And you know what? Not everyone can afford business coaching at this point. I think that you can ultimately make sacrifices for what's important to you, but I love to have this podcast platform to kind of share some of my trials and tribulations so that I can share the spin that I've put on them to equate better success in every realm, business, team, personal, and hopefully that will give you guys encouragement to either keep going or maybe you're wondering if entrepreneurship is for you. Because listen, if I knew what I was getting into, I would have thought long and hard about, I wouldn't have done it any other way. It's kind of like parenthood. Like you would never do it any other way, but no, like people tell you how hard it is, but you don't actually know how hard it is. So let's dive in. So when I first started my business, I was honestly just fueled with passion and determination. I had a vision of creating something groundbreaking. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to use my own visionary mind. I didn't know exactly how to put that into words at the time, but I knew that I wasn't being utilized with my best skill set. And I thought that through medical aesthetics and through relationships, I could really transform people's lives. And in the early days, I had a couple of employees who I really thought were all in, and they were really talented, super driven, had a great skill set, and really seemed deeply aligned with where we were going. I have to admit, didn't really have a great vision. I didn't have it written down. I didn't have core values that were all solidified and where every decision and every hire was wrapped around these core values. So, that is something that I've massively learned since the turn of events, but they were really the cornerstone of growth. And as a young business owner, I leaned on these employees heavily. They brought in profit. Um, they brought in some expertise and with, a growing Instagram, it really was bringing in patients and it was this great synergy. And honestly, all of that really mattered a lot in the beginning because every dollar felt like a lifeline. And now looking back, I see so many red flags and I saw them then. They were subtle, they were gnawing, they were whispers, things that didn't feel right. And, the energy just really, really started to shift and their loyalty started to feel performative. Conversations really started to grow quieter when I'd walk into the room. But they were still performing. And actually, a lot of times, some of your most toxic employees that need to go are the most profitable. And so, as a new business owner, I was just really scared. I didn't know if I pushed too hard or I had certain conversations, would I lose them? And so I just continued to kind of ignore the intuition that something really wasn't right. And when the truth of what was going on hit me like a freight train, um, it was hard. There were these key employees that weren't just planning to leave, they were honestly orchestrating a betrayal. And gosh, it was really hurtful. They weren't just moving on to start something new and um, sharing with me that they just had a desire to also be an entrepreneur, their focus was really disturbingly fixated on me. And their strategy has continued after a few years to not just be about building success, but it was really trying to dismantle mine. And they didn't just want to win, they wanted me to lose. And the emotional roller coaster back then was really relentless. It was just, shock, anger, confusion, betrayal, just all twisted inside me and started to eat me alive. And I just thought, like, how could people that I've mentored, trusted, poured resources into, put on platforms, supported, really turn against me? And how had I missed that this was all going down? I just questioned everything, my judgment, my leadership, my worth, would my business survive? And yet, as the hits kept coming, I had to continue to lead. And one day I pulled aside one of my best friends at the time, who was still an employee after these people left, always had been a confidant to me. I later learned she had known about this betrayal all along that was going down. And I decided in that moment of like learning all this, wow, I really have a responsibility to the team that's still standing. And I decided to take the high road. And as a leader, I wanted to address the situation with grace and humility. So I apologized to her. I acknowledged how hard it must have been to carry the weight of secrets that she didn't ask for. And regardless of, going from like a really close friendship to a boss team member, employee relationship, I still expected her to meet me with a level of empathy since there was so much invested on both sides. But honestly, her response really blindsided me. And I was, kind of the brunt of a lot of blame. She had said that it had been super awful to endure these secrets and tension when I wasn't the one bringing them, but at the end of the day, in the position that I was in as the leader, I just kind of had to take that and make decisions and move forward how I saw fit. And so the person that I thought I could lean on in my business as a team member, in the midst of this betrayal, really made me feel like this betrayal was my fault. And the reverberations of that moment continue to ripple through my team for months and even as long as, over a year until that person eventually moved on. But really, trust was shattered with that relationship. I think that in now the Jessica leader that I am now of my team, I think that I would have made different decisions back then with the reactions that I was seeing, but also there was a vulnerability in my business at that point, and then each member that was still left, they really had a job to do, and I needed them to do that to keep the business rolling for the people that really did invest in the core values and the mission and the vision. So, yeah, I realized that the very foundation of the culture that I was building, which it's funny because culture is in both of my business names, I have beauty culture and cultured wellness. There were cracks and it was time to rebuild. And it was not just about the business, but it was also about myself. Why is this phenomenon so common amongst entrepreneurs? This story is definitely painful. It's one that I stand on platform and speak about, but it isn't unique. Like I said, it's a rite of passage for many successful entrepreneurs. Um, it's the brighter the light that you shine, the sharper the shadow it casts. And the psychology behind this phenomenon I found to really help me, and it reveals several truths about people. And this may help you in times where you feel like you don't know where to turn, or you're just sitting there holding the mess after kind of some trauma, and you're wondering, is it me? And so, although I really, really believe in looking in the mirror and having a lot of self-reflection and honing it on your leadership skills, obviously, if you're going to lead a team, I think that there are these few truths that you can look at and see why this kind of goes down. So one of those is how success really exposes insecurity of people. So when you rise to prominence, it inevitably is going to highlight feelings of inadequacy. employees, peers, friends, even sadly family that's happened to me, they measure themselves against your accomplishments. It's human nature. Yes, it sucks. But instead of people being inspired, which really should happen, and that's how I try to look at things, it makes people become really embittered. And I think that another huge truth that I leaned on was there's a fear of the unknown with your team members. And for some employees, your growth means change. And when they're used to seeing you and knowing you here at this level entry position where you're struggling, you're a new business, you've risked everything. It's not like you are, uber successful. No one even knows really who you are. But there's new expectations. There's going to be new systems with change. There's going to be new challenges that they're going to have to trust that you know how to do things well. They're going to see you make mistakes as a leader. And do they see that as a vulnerability where they come in and try to highlight that? Or do they band behind you and say, wow, I really believe in this mission, vision, and values? I didn't have those. So really those who resist change will often choose to exit. And there have been many people on my team that as I have changed quickly and majorly, that they don't always leave gracefully. And instead they might channel their fear of what their new change is going to look like into resentment for how you maybe weren't supporting their needs and what they needed in terms of the unknown. There are people that just are not good with unknown. And obviously, as an entrepreneur and a leader, it's your job to create that comfort and that trust. But that only goes so far. I can't predict the entire future. That's why we focus on a vision for the future. And we have to constantly pivot to make that vision happen. We're making the best decisions, the best strategic planning. I just spent an hour on a call today about strategic planning with my business coach and printed out all the resources. And I'm gonna, as an entrepreneur, when your team's like, what is she doing now that she's not seeing patients? This, looking at 2025 already at a glance and really starting to plan that out. So anyway, back to the truths that kind of come along with this phenomenon. There's also this lure of comparison. And I actually have heard my business coach call it comparisonitis oftentimes on her podcast. Your success is going to make other people wonder, why not me? And instead of focusing on their unique strengths, they fall into this trap of comparison and decide that the only way that they can climb higher is to pull you down. And that is something that has been so glaringly obvious in a couple of these parted relationships for me. Um, Whether they realize it or not, it's a sad thing. And it's like I said, that's unfortunately another ugly human nature type of a characteristic where you're imperfect and it happens. And then there's the whole misery loves company in kind of the concept of group dynamics and gossip. Discontented employees are often going to form alliances to validate their feelings, and it's going to spin narratives. And the further they actually get away from you, the more they feel like they believe the mistruths that they have told themselves about you. And actually, they probably even believe those things about you, and it just justifies their actions and really paints you as the villain. And that is very, very, very comforting to these groups of people. So this is kind of rounding out on just why this happens. Sometimes understanding the why really does just help us process these feelings and help us reframe. One of the things that I've been doing recently, well, actually for a long time, is setting goals for myself. And one of the goals that I had recently written is I want to read 2 books every month. And so right now I'm reading a book called Turtles All the Way Down, which is vaccine science and myths. And I'm also reading the Steve Jobs biography. And there is a really great example of all of this from Steve Jobs. And I actually have really realized that reading biographies is probably biographies of visionary leaders, I should say, is probably one of the most amazing things that you can do as a leader, because just like this podcast may resonate with someone that's on the same path that I am, when I look at these people who have accomplished so much more than I have. I mean, I love the quote at the beginning of one of his book, like the people who change the world are the people who are crazy enough to think they can. So one story I go back to when thinking about his resilience from his book and transformation of Steve Jobs, um, his journey of like how betrayal has literally been fuel for growth. So rewinding back to 1985, Steve Jobs was the co-founder of Apple, was ousted from his company. Can you imagine that? Being forced out of the very thing that you built from the ground up. For Jobs, it wasn't just a professional setback. It was truly personal. And he decided that, um, you know, as public humiliation, like having your life's work ripped away from you. And let's be honest, many people thought he was like done after this. What did Steve Jobs do next? He really decided that this is where the magic starts. He, instead of getting stuck in bitterness, he really did choose self-reflection. So he turned these setbacks into opportunities. He looked for, you know, how can he be recognized for something else critical? His ego was completely brash, and his leadership style had really caused him to have a lot of enemies. And I think that when he realized that and admitted that, I think that took so much guts. Instead of wallowing, he pivoted. And so I think, when I look back at the kind of leader I was not the best leader. Was it coming from a bad intent and wanting my team to leave and try to take me down? No. Was I, um, someone who maliciously or selfishly was out for number one? No, I was out for my company and all the people that worked for me. Actually, to a fault, I've made a lot of changes now that um, actually protect my business way more because there's other people that work there. And that was really traumatic for all of us. But after he was ousted from Apple, he founded Next and acquired Pixar, and he poured his energy into those ventures and worked on his leadership. And what's incredible is that he returned to Apple in 97 and he wasn't the same leader. He was more seasoned, more collaborative, and he was ready to take Apple to heights that it had never, ever seen before. He balanced his vision with emotional intelligence. And early Steve Jobs was brilliant, but let's be real, he was probably a nightmare to work with. And he demanded perfection and didn't care if feelings got trampled in the way. Um, but during his time away from Apple, he learned a game-changing big lesson in that big ideas require great teams. And when he came back, he didn't just push people harder. He decided that he wanted to inspire them. And then that's when Apple, really became what it's known to be today. So I think another thing is letting go of resentment. I think when people betray you, it's so easy to let that anger, that bitterness fester, or make you kind of like want to self-preserve and, tell your side of the story. And Jobs didn't do that. He took all of that energy and channeled it into creating new and forging forward. I remember in the beginning of the betrayal, like there was a lot that I could have gone after legally. And I did start down that road, but I just really had this pivotal moment where I thought, you know what? I only get so much energy and so many hours in a day, and I can either focus on doing what they're doing and mirroring that gross behavior, or I can focus and channel all my energy into acknowledging how this happened and how to be better. And so that's what I did. There was a famous Stanford commencement speech that actually I'm talking about my business coach so much. If you guys aren't working with a business coach, you really should reach out to mine. I'm happy to share her name. Her name is Kaylee Lindholm. She owns KLC Consulting, and we can put her information in the show notes, absolutely. But she reminded me when I was kind of at this crux of struggling with aesthetics and wellness, and am I leading one for the other? Am I having shiny object syndrome? Like, is there synergy between the two? And she was like, Okay, hello, let's connect the dots backwards, which is something that this commencement speech was really about. If you haven't listened to this commencement speech, I'll also put the link to this in the show notes too, because it's so good. But he said getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have happened to me. And he said the heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. And that is what entrepreneurship is. There's no upward tick of like, I've got this and I'm picking up speed and momentum. Like it is a roller coaster. Um, you know, if you harbor resentment with every bad or hard thing that happens to you, you will have so much weight that you're carrying and you'll never be able to unlock the next level. And I think that when you really think about creating a legacy beyond yourself, you know, Steve Jobs' second run at Apple wasn't just about making great products, it was building something bigger than himself. And he mentored Tim Cook, created a culture of innovation, and he ensured that Apple would thrive without him. Like, talk about a true leader. You're shifting your ego to legacy. And he really did embrace failure. He didn't shy away from it. He didn't try to minimize it. And he didn't let it define him. And not every idea was a hit. You're going to have to pivot. But he inspired his team to know that he had them and that, you know, he was going to create the iPod, which then he was creating the iPhone and throwing away all the investment, like in making the iPod completely irrelevant, but it changed the entire world. Um, so I just think that that is such a poignant story and someone who was so great and really got his ego out of the way for something even bigger. So for me, well, the betrayal was really devastating at the time. It also became a really big turning point and a forced evolution. And here's how, when you are in this place, no matter if you're an entrepreneur, like I said, or a leader, or you're just struggling with relationships or resentment, here are 6 ways to reframe this kind of experience to actually refuel your growth. Number one, it's not about you. People's decisions to betray, to criticize, to undermine, those all have more to do with their internal battles than your leadership. And I have to tell myself this every day. I swear, this is not something that I have mastered. I think it's a practice. And it's also, not a truth that I want to attach to blindly. I want to make sure that I'm always looking in the mirror and making sure that I am checking myself because as an entrepreneur, there's not a lot of people that can do check you if you're ruling this business by on your own. Um, but when someone fixates on your downfall, they are projecting their own fears and their own inadequacies on you. That's just how it is. And um, that's basically it. Like, you don't need to look any deeper into it. I was sitting next to my friend on the plane on the way home, and I was telling her, I don't want to change. I don't want to be hardened. Um, I want to be sensitive to others' feelings and validate them and really use them as feedback and do better. But um, but I also don't want to let it eat me alive. And she was like, it's not about you. And so that is the first way to help reframe those kind of experiences. Number two is growth creates separation. As your business evolves, it will naturally outgrow some people. And in fact, when I did find out about what was going on and um, I parted ways with this person and let her go, I told her this business has outgrown you and it's not a failure. It's a sign that your vision is moving forward and you have a different standard of excellence. And not everyone is meant to stay for the entire journey. It doesn't mean that you can't hold space for massive gratitude for the role that they played, but it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be best friends with them for the rest of your life either. Number three, for how to reframe criticism is proof of impact. Ugh, impact is one of our core values, and the louder the critics, the greater the proof that you're making waves. If you weren't doing something significant, they wouldn't feel so threatened, and listen, sister, no one would be talking about you. Number four, it's a mirror for reflection. So I've talked about this a couple times during this podcast, and I've talked about it before. Reflection is really important to me. And while it's important to not take their actions personally, it's equally as important to reflect and ask yourself, did I communicate expectations clearly? Did I foster a culture of transparency and trust? And how can I ensure my team aligns more deeply with my vision moving forward? Also, when people aren't meeting your expectations, I've also learned that am I giving them the resources to do their job effectively? And again, am I communicating what I'm expecting very clearly with good boundaries? Number five, celebrate the shift. Losing those who don't align with your vision is a gift. I remember one of these people who went off and started this new business. For a while, it was just not a good fit. And I spoke to a someone that I consider as a mentor in our industry, and I've worked with him in a couple of different strategic partnerships. But I remember when I was talking to him about this person and how misaligned she was with where we were going, he said, give her the gift of letting her go because if she's not meant to be on your team, she's meant for something different. And I did not do that at that time, but I will never forget that. And so it's a gift to them as much as it is to you. And even if it doesn't feel like that for them at the time, it creates space for the right people to join you and for those who are genuinely committed to your mission. And I promise you, the more that you keep people around that are not aligned with your mission, the more it dilutes the loyalty of those who are there because of the mission and the vision and the values that you carry. And number six, the power of detachment. Oh, letting go of the need to be liked or validated by everyone is very liberating. Oh, focus instead on your core values, on your vision, and on the people who do believe in you. Why does your business exist? Why are you doing what you're doing? What are you bringing to your community and to the world? Betrayal will test you in ways that you've never imagined, and it shakes the ground beneath you. It leaves you questioning everything, your judgment, your decisions, even your own worth. Like, should I even be doing this? And the initial shock is very paralyzing, and then there's emotions that follow. It's this whole cycle: anger, hurt, confusion. And it can feel really all consuming, especially in the heat of it. But as I've learned, these moments, as painful as they are so incredibly pivotal. They aren't just obstacles, they're invitations to evolve into a better leader, to be a better person, the person that you're actually meant to be. For me, facing betrayal forced me to really take a hard look at myself. It taught me to trust my intuition, especially when the red flags were subtle but really persistent. It showed me the importance of setting boundaries, not just to protect myself, but to define the culture, the vision, the mission of my business. And that took a lot of hard work to show up and do. And at the moment, in the midst of betrayal, I didn't really feel like doing it, but I knew I had to for the people that were there. This whole betrayal situation helped me focus and refocus everything on what truly mattered, which was the people that believed in the mission and that stood there with me. The priorities that align with my core values and the vision I refuse to compromise on, that is truly what matters. The let them theory, popularized by Mel Robbins, became a really guiding principle for me. It's about relinquishing control over what others do and what they say and what they think, and focusing instead on how you choose to respond. Let them leave, let them talk, let them doubt you, let them go against you, let them try to take you down, let them say whatever they want because their actions are a reflection of them and not you. When you embrace this mindset, something truly powerful happens. You stop wasting energy on what you can't control and you really start to channel it toward your growth and your resilience. Betrayal no longer becomes this anchor that pulls you down. It becomes a great springboard and it propels you forward. It gives you a lot of resilience for when you do face similar situations. So if you're going through a storm, whatever it may look like, and this resonates, remember this. The hits may keep coming, but each one is shaping you into the leader that will make you weather anything. Each challenge is going to chisel away and make you who you are. It's going to whittle away that wood and reveal a stronger, wiser, more breathtaking version of yourself. Let the lessons in and let the toxic energy out. Let them do whatever they feel they need to do. While they focus on tearing you down, you are building yourself up and you're building your business up and you are building your team up. And most importantly, building your legacy. So thank you for listening to this podcast today. I just felt, sometimes there's just things on my heart that I feel like this is being put on my heart for some reason. And even if it resonates with one person, I'm going to share it and take the time to do so because I'm really passionate about this project, the Curated Beauty Podcast. Until next time, I will talk to you guys soon. Keep building, keep rising, and let the rest fall where it may.